An Aswang is a cryptid in Filipino folklore. The Aswang is an evil werewolf and vampire-like creature and is the subject of a wide variety of myths and stories. Spanish colonists noted that the Aswang was the most feared among the mythical creatures of the Philippines. The myth of the Aswang is well known throughout the Philippines. It's especially popular in the Western Visayan regions. Aswang stories and definitions vary greatly from region to region and person to person, and no particular set of characteristics can be ascribed to the term. The wide variety of descriptions in the Aswang stories makes it difficult to settle upon a fixed definition of Aswang appearances or activities. However, several common themes that alter Aswangs from other mythological creatures do emerge. The Aswang's most fearsome ability is its knack for blending in with its victims. During the day, Aswangs look and act just like regular people. Although they are generally shy and somewhat recluse, they can have jobs, friends, and even families. During the night, Aswangs shift into a form that is better suited to hunting. Different regional versions of the creature are said to take on different forms. The tik-tik and wak-wak become large birds, while the zegbeng takes on the form of a Tasmanian devil. Aswangs have also been reported shifting into pigs and dogs. In addition to shape-shifting, Aswangs also have the ability to transform the appearance of other objects. It's common for an Aswang to transform plant material into a double of one of its victims, in order to hide the evidence of its feeding habits from locals. Another tactic Aswangs use to disguise themselves is to use sinister vocal tricks. As the fearsome predator gets closer to its victims, its calls gets quieter and quieter, so its victim is tricked into thinking the monster is actually getting further away. Despite the fact that belief in this terrifying creature has spread throughout the Philippines, there aren't many well-known individual stories. Instead, the Aswang's fame is built on a collection of first-hand encounters, and almost everyone who claims to have seen this fabled creature has a slightly different report. After posting about the Aswang a while back, some of my subscribers sent me some of their personal stories. One man named Joshua sent me the following story. One day I was walking outside with my sister. At the time we were both young. I was 12 and she was 8 years old. We live not too far from the jungle and would always walk there. It's a beautiful place and has always captured my imagination. The Aswang is well known where I'm from. I've heard stories from many people and even my friends' parents have told me their own personal stories. While on our walk, me and my sister encountered this person. What was strange is that they were very tall. We didn't recognise this person, and this was odd because we knew many of the local people. The only way I can really describe the person is that they was really white and tall. What I mean by this is it looked like the person's face was painted. It was one of the creepiest things I've ever seen. As soon as my sister saw him, she hid behind me. What happened next though was even more bizarre. After locking eyes with us for what seemed like forever, the man then climbed a nearby tree. This was weird enough, but it was the speed that he climbed the tree which was strange. Within 15 seconds he was at the top of a 20 to 30 foot tree. This may not sound high, but it was a thick tree. After this he stayed at the top of the tree and would let out a screech sound. We ran back and asked my parents to come and take a look. They could tell we had seen something as my sister was visibly distressed. However, when we came back the man was nowhere to be seen. The only indication that someone had been there was the large footprints in the mud. These led deep into the forest. After describing to my parents what we witnessed, they thought it may have been a hermit who was living in the forest, or even someone that was raised by wild animals. Since that encounter though, I've never seen anyone who matches the man's description. I believe that what we witnessed that day was an Aswang, and some of the local neighbours even agreed with us that what we saw was an Aswang. Another person said the following about their encounter. When I encountered what I thought was an Aswang, I didn't know what to do. This encounter happened during the night. I had always been aware of the creature but had never seen one in real life. This is something that stuck with me. As I was walking home, I could see that I was being followed. It was very obvious as well. When I stopped, they would stop. After walking for 5 minutes, we came to a bend and this is when I tried to run from them. After running for several minutes, I looked behind my shoulder to see this person running as well. This person or thing was very ugly. It looked like a zombie. After I got close to home, the thing just stopped running. It then slowly walked back into the darkness. It wasn't human, I'm sure of it. I know that doesn't sound possible, but the way it looked wasn't normal. It didn't even run normal. It was running very low to the ground, and I thought at one point it was running on all fours. This thing has creeped me out for many years. Some have compared the Aswang to the Dogman, with some people coming forward and saying they've actually seen them transform into a Dogman. The Dogman has been witnessed by many people over the years, and it's said to be a werewolf-type creature. It was first reported in 1887 in Wexford County, Michigan. Sightings have been reported in several locations throughout Michigan, primarily in the northwestern quadrant of the Lower Peninsula. In 1987, the legend of the Michigan Dogman gained popularity when a disc jockey recorded a song about the creature and its reported sightings. Over the years, many stories have been reported. In 1961, one of the most detailed accounts happened. A night watchman was patrolling a manufacturing plant in Big Rapids, Michigan. During this night shift, they saw a peculiar figure. At first, he thought it was a person until he saw the dog-like features. He approached the creature with caution and was able to snap this photograph. The photos still remain an unsolved mystery. These Aswangs have been witnessed all around the world. One person said they saw a bird-like creature transform into a dogman. This happened in the summer of 2001. The eyewitness said the following: "My brother and I were looking out towards the back of our house. Where we live is very marshy, and during the night time we get a lot of wildlife back there. On this occasion we noticed that some of the wild deer had run off. When we looked closely, we could see a giant bird was hovering above them. However, as it started to fly down, it went behind some grass. Then a matter of seconds later, a large dog-like creature stood up and ran off into the brush." Another sighting of the alleged Aswang follows a similar theme. The eyewitness states that while living in the Philippines for a few years, they witnessed a strange creature. However, instead of describing a physical creature, they said that it appeared to be an apparition. They had this to say: "While visiting some friends, me and my husband had a strange encounter. The place we were staying at was very nice, but it did have a weird feeling to it. We are believers in the paranormal, and from the first night we thought that it could have been haunted. During the first few nights nothing happened, but on night 6 I encountered something bizarre. This entity was making banging noises around my room. It was so loud that it actually woke me up. After looking around I couldn't see anything, but then I caught a glimpse of these balls of light at the end of my bed. I soon realised these eyes belonged to an apparition. It didn't help that I froze when I saw it. I was so scared that I couldn't move. After 30 seconds or so, it just vanished in front of my eyes. I woke my husband up crying, and we moved out of that apartment that night. Some have told me that I encountered the Aswang. As fantastic as stories of the Aswang might seem, they may actually be inspired by real-life events. One theory is that the native wildlife was the inspiration for the legends. The tick-tick and whack-whack hunting calls the monster is said to make are probably the cause of nocturnal birds. Bats, birds, mammals, and also an endangered species of flying lemur have all been hunted. This is because people think they're an Aswang in a transformed state. Finally, the Aswang legend may be used to explain away disappearances in the Philippines. When a person disappears, it may be easier for local people to attribute the crime to a demon, rather than one of their fellow humans. Tabloids often attribute crimes to the Aswang, which adds fuel to the mythology. Most of the encounters also happen during bad lighting, and people may be seeing something that's not actually there. Unlike most other hospitals, Nocton Hall began life as a stately manor home until World War I, when it was taken over and used by American forces as a place for injured soldiers to rest and recuperate. It was used again during World War II as a military hospital, and has been used in a similar manner ever since, including as an American military hospital during the Gulf War. The intimidating building was abandoned in 1995, and multiple cases of arson rendered it unusable again. Stories exist of one ghost in particular haunting the grounds, a sobbing spirit of a young girl whose presence has been reported by various people who have stayed at the building. She is said to haunt one specific bedroom more than others. with numerous people claiming to have been awoken at exactly 4:30 in the morning. When they wake up, they see the apparition of a girl standing at the foot of the bed. The story continues that she is apparently the ghost of a servant girl. Other people have come forward and said they've witnessed ghostly soldiers. Some have even tried to interact with them, but when they do, these ghostly apparitions just vanish. Nocturne Hall is still standing, and some people have explored what's left of the building. One person said the following: "While exploring here, you get the feeling of emptiness. I can't really explain it, but it feels cold and empty. I feel like bad things happened here. We found some bizarre things while we explored it. For example, there were lots of children's toys spread out everywhere. This only added to the eeriness of the building. One thing did happen that I couldn't explain. After around half an hour of exploring, I decided I wanted to head off. At this point it was dark and I started to get a little creeped out. However, just before I left, I could see a man about 50 meters away. I thought it may have been a police officer and I was in trouble, but the man started to slowly walk away. I followed him as I didn't want to get in trouble. I didn't even know if I was allowed on the property. However, when I tried to find him, I couldn't. There was no trace of him. I searched for him for around 10 minutes and couldn't find anything. What's bizarre as well is the fact it was really dusty and there wasn't any footprints. After this, I thought that I may have witnessed an apparition. I ran as fast as I could and didn't look back once.
I believe that this nation should commit itself to achieving the goal, before this decade is out, of landing a man on the moon and returning him safely to the Earth. No single space project in this period will be more impressive to mankind or more important for the long-range exploration of space.
The main objective of Apollo 11 was to complete a national goal set by President John F. Kennedy. This was set on the 25th of May 1961. During the exploration, the two astronauts were to gather samples of lunar surface materials for return to Earth. They were also to extensively photograph the lunar terrain, the deployed scientific equipment, the lunar module spacecraft, and each other, both with still and motion picture cameras. On the 20th of July 1969, American astronauts Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin became the first humans ever to land on the moon. About 6.5 hours later, Armstrong became the first person to walk on the moon. As he began to take his first steps, Armstrong famously said, "That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind." Armstrong and Aldrin spent 21 hours 36 minutes on the moon's surface. However, over the years, many people have come forward and questioned the mission. Some theorists have put forward the theory that they never went to the moon, but rather the mission was actually filmed in a Hollywood studio. Although many debunk this theory, there are those that still question it to this day. Recently, a video has been going around suggesting that Buzz Aldrin admits we never went to the moon. A little girl asked him the question, "Why have we not been back to the moon?" And he said the following: "That's my question. I want to know, but I think I know. Because we didn't go there and that's the way it happened. And if it didn't happen, it's nice to know why it didn't happen. So in the future, if we want to keep doing something, we need to know why something stopped in the past that we wanted to keep it going." So what people are focusing on is the part where he said we didn't go there. Many have come forward and said that he slipped up, and finally admitted that we've never been to the moon. Websites have been posting this around suggesting that he didn't mean to say this, with many picking up on his body language and suggesting that he was actually telling the truth. However, during that same interview, he goes into detail of why we've never been back to the moon. He explains that it was a very expensive mission, and that it's the main reason we haven't gone back. He goes on to say that we don't want to keep redoing what we've already done, and we should look to future projects. The reason people are getting confused could be because he worded his answer badly, and this is what's being picked up on. Buzz makes a good point about money, and this could be the reason we never went back. Back in 1973, the total cost of the Apollo program reported to Congress was $25.4 billion, so spending this money on a mission that's already been achieved would be pointless. It would make more sense for NASA to spend the money on other ventures. However, not everyone is so convinced, and as mentioned, people think he actually let out the truth. So what do you guys make of this? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. The former head of a secret government program to investigate UFO sightings told several media outlets that extraterrestrial life may exist. Simultaneously, the public benefit corporation he's affiliated with has raised more than $2.2 million. This is to research exotic technologies affiliated with unidentified aerial phenomena. If you're going to believe any reports of UFOs, you might as well trust those coming from the men who've actually been to space. The list of those who have made claims of sightings include Edgar Mitchell, Caddy Coleman and Dr. Brian O'Leary. However, it's believed that what many of these astronauts were seeing were parts of the rocket as it floated away in space. Many believers of the paranormal state that it's possible for humans and pets to interact with ghosts. There have been many stories of people using ghost boxes to talk to alleged spirits. These boxes produce something that's known as an EVP, or electronic voice phenomenon. However, some have debated these boxes as being fake. One person had recently come back from a ghost walk and started to experience something strange. She had this to say: "After booking a local ghost hunt with my friend, I started to experience something weird. We'd always wanted to try it and finally got round to booking it. After the walk, we both went back to our separate houses. That night I kept getting the feeling I wasn't alone. I had a bad nightmare that night and noticed my cat was acting weird. He kept looking at the bottom of the stairs and meowing. At 2 AM in the morning I could hear the doors banging downstairs. Thinking I had a burglar, I called my dad. He arrived quickly, but we couldn't find anything that pointed to a break-in. My cat kept looking down the stairs every night for at least 4 months. Then suddenly one day he stopped and so did the random noises. I've never gone on a ghost walk again." Another witness had this to say: "I've seen spirits my entire life. One of my first memories of a house my family moved into was when I was 9. On this particular occasion, I got into bed and saw the Hat Man standing near my closet. I was not asleep in the slightest. I had just got into bed and was sitting up. The last one I saw was around 2 years ago after I was outside smoking on my porch. I live on a very quiet suburban street. I saw someone walk down the cross street to my left and disappear under a street lamp. It's weird because I could clearly see that it had the silhouette of a human, but it wasn't human because it was so dark, and when it walked near the street lamp it was just gone. This continued for years and I'd always see him inside the house. When I was 11 we got a cat. What was strange though is the cat would act strange when it was around me. It would almost try to avoid me. One night when I went downstairs for food, I saw the cat standing on its back legs meowing. It was a really bizarre sight and I think I may have witnessed something. After doing some research, it's been suggested that pets have a born instinct where they can see ghosts. I believe that what my cat witnessed that night was the Hat Man." There's some controversy over which snake is the largest, but most give this title to the reticulated python. However, there are those that have come forward and said they've encountered huge anacondas. With an average length of over 20 feet, the anaconda is one of the world's longest snakes. Some of these snakes are said to have reached lengths of up to 29 feet. However, some have said that they've encountered anacondas that are even larger than that. Over the past few hundred years, there have been many stories of giant anacondas around the Amazon basin. Native tribes in the eastern Ecuador region have come forward and told us stories of these giant creatures. They describe giant snakes who are able to take down a whole group of hunters in an instant. Some of the tales are very well documented and told on from generation to generation. It's been suggested that these giant snakes were feared by the locals and they tried to avoid them at all costs. These snakes are common in the region and seeing one going back wasn't rare. People that did encounter them didn't want to take them on because of their great size. These were probably the last giants of serpents that were equipped with hundreds of pounds of powerful muscle and speed. It's said that a full-grown man has no chance of survival when encountering one of these giant reptilian predators. The locals have reported that these giant snakes can reach lengths of up to 50 to 100 feet long. However, as with most of these reports, they do remain unverified. The well-known observer Percy Fawcett, from the Royal Geographic Society's contribution, reported an encounter of an anaconda pushing 62 feet long. Fawcett with his native crew drifted along the Rio Abuna. when he spotted a great triangular serpentine head appearing at the bow of the boat. Fawcett open-fired, hitting the creature in the spine. In its last moments, the snake thrashed water all around the boat. The diameter of the snake's body was relatively small, only around 12 inches. Nevertheless, Fawcett had no way to carry the specimen back. A snake with those dimensions would weigh several thousand pounds. He went on to describe enormous trails in the sandbanks. These stories are also verified by inland rubber pickers and Indians who told stories about these giants. These snakes would leave trails in the swampy riverbanks around 6 to 7 feet wide. The Brazilian Boundary Commission mentioned also comparable sightings of these trails, which had been made by a snake of a monstrous size, at least 80 foot in length. Early explorers also mentioned reports of snakes 80 feet devouring animals as large as oxen and horses. The largest anacondas reported were a 95-foot 2-ton specimen reportedly shot in British Columbia, and a report of another snake that was captured that was at least 100 feet long. There are even historical reports of anacondas big enough to take down small houses and villages. Today there is still debate over how large the anacondas in the Amazon would be, and based on the reports and unverified measurements, 37 feet seems to be the largest. Although the largest confirmed anaconda was 27 feet and weighed 550 pounds. It still remains a mystery of what Percy Fawcett had seen and discovered, and is very regretful that not better material photographs could harden these facts. Locals over the past 100 years have come forward and stated they've seen and witnessed these giant snakes. One traveller had this to say: "During the 1970s, when deforestation started, I decided to visit the rainforest. Back then there was so much more to see and the wildlife was plentiful. I'd always wanted to go here, and being an amateur wildlife photographer made me want to do this even more. I have extensive knowledge in the environment and animals. I studied for many years at university and decided that after I graduated I would go to the Amazon. I went with a friend who I'd spoken to previously, and they too were excited to go. It's sad to see the state of the Amazon now compared to when I went. However, even when I travelled there, they were still tearing down the forest. It's sad when you see it for yourself. It's one of the planet's most incredible locations and holds many different species of wildlife." When we arrived, we had already made contacts and met up with our guide. He was a very kind gentleman, and helped us out with everything. On the day of the tour, it was a beautiful day. The forest was even more breathtaking than I could have imagined. We started to venture in, and we must have been walking for around 2 to 3 hours before we stopped. The noises that surrounded us were incredible. The forest was alive. After stopping around 4 hours into our trip, our guide showed us something. Down on the ground we could see a small to medium-sized trail. Leaves had been moved and small parts of plants had been destroyed. It looked as if someone had walked through the forest with a large pole and created this. Me and my friend thought it was the work that was being done at the time. However, we couldn't be further from the truth. Our guide said that this belonged to a large animal, specifically a snake. After asking several questions, we learned there were snakes in here that grew to enormous sizes. Our guide told us a story of when his mother encountered a huge snake laid out in the forest. She estimated the snake as being over 50 feet long. It was a brown colour and had piercing yellow eyes. Our guide said that these snakes had been witnessed by the locals, and that they stay clear of them. We were intrigued by these stories, however we also tried to keep an open mind. We tracked this animal for around half an hour, then to our surprise we actually found it. Our guide said that this is the creature that locals are witnessing, and that they do grow to even bigger than this. We'd never seen a snake this large and up close before. It was an incredible sight. 2 things stood out for us: the size and thickness of the snake. We identified the snake as being an anaconda. We could tell this because of the brown and green skin. It was an incredible specimen, and if I had to guess I would say it was easily over 20 feet. Maybe even pushing 25 feet. One of the issues though, as pointed out by my friend, is that we had no way of knowing its true size. This is also the case for all the encounters. Our guide told us this snake was around 5 to 8 years old. He also told us another interesting story. He'd been on his own on this particular occasion. He said he would go out on his own as it would give him more experience with the forest. On this occasion he said he could hear twigs breaking in the distance. Thinking it was a monkey or a sloth, he decided to pursue the noise. After the noises got louder and louder, he knew he was on the right track. However, he said he could tell the noises were coming from the ground. After reaching the source of the noise, the culprit was a giant snake. The snake was moving through the forest and he got a good idea of how big this thing was. He estimated the snake as being over 40 feet long, and was again an anaconda. He observed it for several minutes before getting back. It was getting dark and he didn't want to be out in the forest at night. He said that these giant snakes are most active at night and will take down a human. People have gone missing in the forest and people point to these creatures for taking them. They don't fear humans, with some saying they will actively hunt them if they're nearby. Me and my friend couldn't believe these stories. They were told with such detail and accuracy they sounded real. He did believe everything he was saying. He also said these snakes are not common, pointing out that he's only seen around 10 of them in his whole life. After we got back, we asked some of the locals and nearly all of them had their own stories of these giant snakes, whether that was personal accounts or stories that had been passed down. After arriving home, I had a new outlook on life. These stories and my own personal encounter made me look at the world in a different way. I have more of an open mind, and give these types of stories a chance. I truly believe this world still has some secrets. Remy van Leerd was a Belgian pilot. He is perhaps best well known for his famous snake encounter. This was when he was returning from a mission in the Congo. According to van Leerd, he was flying over the jungle in a helicopter when he spotted a giant snake. He described it as very dark green with a white belly. He estimated the snake as being over 50 feet in length. In his account, the serpent reared up as though it wanted to attack the helicopter. He even managed to snap a picture of the beast, which is now well known in cryptozoological circles. Unfortunately, the picture is blurry, and doesn't provide anything to indicate the scale, so it can't be used as proof that this snake really was that enormous. Still, he insisted that the monster was a true giant, and could easily have eaten up a man if it wanted to. Some have put forward the idea that what people are seeing could be a Titanoboa. Titanoboa was a giant prehistoric snake. After the KT extinction that occurred 65 million years ago, it took a few million years for terrestrial life on Earth to replenish itself. Appearing during the Paleocene epoch, Titanoboa was one of the first plus-size reptiles to reclaim the ecological niches left open by the demise of the dinosaurs. When the snake was alive, modern-day Peru and Colombia were tropical, which meant Titanoboa was able to grow to much larger sizes. It's believed this giant snake was 50 to 60 feet long and weighed 2,000 pounds. But of course this theory is very unlikely. So what do you guys make of these stories and encounters? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Thanks for watching and don't forget to subscribe for more videos.